There is a number that runs through the center of this entire story, not a headline, not a political statement, just a number. 2000, that was the figure Western intelligence agencies agreed upon for years. The Pentagon built everything around it. Every major defense institution in the world accepted it. Iran's maximum missile range, and 2,000 kilometers, this number was not a casual estimate. It came from decades of satellite surveillance, observed missile tests, launch site analysis, and stans and stans, and some of the most expensive intelligence operations ever conducted. That number answered the most important question any military can ask. How far can they reach? And the answer determined everything. Which bases needed heavy protection? Which locations needed active defense systems? Which assets were safe enough to store America's most valuable military equipment? Every dollar spent, every bomber parked, every radar positioned was placed according to that single number. Then Iran fired. 2 missiles traveled 4,000 kilometers. And that number, that foundation, collapsed in real time. But here is what makes this moment truly historic. It was not a simple miscalculation. It was not an outdated intelligence estimate. It was a deliberate deception, carefully maintained, executed with extraordinary patience. Over many years, Iran never tested these missiles in ways Western satellites could detect. They never launched them in exercises that foreign analysts could observe. They never corrected the 2,000-kilometer assessment that Washington was confidently repeating in official briefings. Every time a Western analyst said, Iran cannot go beyond 2,000 kilometers, Iran said nothing. They let the world believe it, and they kept building. Now consider what a 4,000-kilometer threat radius means when placed on a real map. Poland falls within range. and Sachs. Parts of southern Europe fall within range. Somalia, Central Asia, significant portions of the Eastern Hemisphere, and Sanspantal and Sasarisos and Insanspotris, all now sit inside a threat circle that nobody in Washington had drawn. And then came the statements that made everything dramatically worse. So in one day before the strike, the President of the United States told the world that Iran's missile capability had been reduced to 0, not weakened, not partially degraded, 0. Okay, 2 days before that, the Israeli Prime Minister said exactly the same thing. Both statements were based on intelligence assessments provided by the agencies whose entire purpose is to track Iranian military capability. Those agencies concluded 0, and within 48 hours, Iranian ballistic missiles were landing 4,000 kilometers from Iranian soil. The credibility damage now runs in 3 simultaneous directions. The intelligence community that produced the 0 assessment, the political leaders who declared it publicly to the world, and the military campaign whose entire narrative of success now has a question it cannot answer. If Iranian missiles were truly at 0, what exactly just struck Diego Garcia? For weeks before this moment, the situation across the Middle East was already deeply alarming. Ground radar networks had been destroyed. Refueling aircraft had been eliminated. Airborne surveillance platforms had been taken out. 14 American bases across the theater had been degraded or rendered inoperable. Each loss was painful. Each loss was significant. But through every single one of those losses, one belief kept the overall situation from becoming a complete crisis. The rear area was safe until there was a place beyond Iranian reach, a place where B-2 stealth bombers were parked in where long-range strike capability was staged and where the strategic reserve of American military power in the Eastern Hemisphere was stored with confidence. That place was Diego Garcia. As long as Diego Garcia remained untouched, The Americans believed the overall advantage was still theirs. The forward losses could be absorbed. The damaged positions could eventually be rebuilt. Because the foundation was still standing, then the foundation moved. The Pentagon now faces something no military force ever wants to face. A complete reassessment. While the conflict is still actively running, every base must be looked at again, every staging area reassessed, every logistical hub repositioned, every location that was placed with confidence beyond the old 2,000-kilometer line must now be evaluated with entirely different eyes. This reassessment is not quick, it is not simple, it is not cheap. It requires updated intelligence on Iranian missile inventories, new range calculations, new trajectory analysis, new defensive investment decisions, and the physical movement of assets that are now discovered to be sitting inside a threat envelope they were never supposed to be in. All of this must happen while Iranian strike operations continue multiple times per day. The Pentagon is not reassessing from a position of calm deliberation. They are recalculating while the storm is still moving around them. And that is the most dangerous position any military force can occupy. The pressure does not stop at American borders either. Every government watching this conflict, every nation hosting American forces on its soil, every country that built its national security around the American military umbrella is now running its own quiet calculation. If Iran can reach Diego Garcia, what else can it reach? What does that mean for the American base on their territory? The American equipment stored in their country, the alliance their entire national defense was constructed around. This reassessment is happening simultaneously in Warsaw, in Rome, in Nairobi, in capitals across the Eastern Hemisphere, quietly, urgently, and with a level of concern that no official government statement will ever fully capture. There is a phrase military planners use when their threat model proves wrong. They call it operating blind, making decisions, spending resources, positioning forces in an environment they no longer fully understand. At this precise moment, that is exactly where the most powerful military on Earth stands. The map they were reading was the wrong map, and until the correct one is drawn, every move they make is a move made in the dark. There is a critical difference between missing something and being deliberately made to miss it. A mistake is accidental, a miscalculation is human. But what Iran executed over years, in complete silence, was neither. It was a plan. Western intelligence did not simply fail to find Iran's true capability. Iran ensured they would not find it. They never tested longer-range systems in observable ways. They never launched in exercises that foreign satellites could track. They never once corrected the 2,000-kilometer assessment that Washington repeated with complete confidence for years. Every time the Western world looked at Iran and said, their maximum range is 2,000 kilometers. Iran said nothing. They kept building, quietly, patiently, carefully. This level of operational discipline is extraordinarily difficult to maintain. Hiding an advanced missile program from the most sophisticated surveillance network ever assembled requires counterintelligence of the highest order, precise coordination, and a deep understanding of exactly what the enemy satellites are looking for. Iran understood what was being watched, and they made sure those satellites saw nothing. That raises one question. That should deeply concern every defense establishment on Earth. If Iran successfully hid this capability, what else have they hidden? The Diego Garcia strike did not only reveal one missile system, it revealed a gap, a systematic structural gap in Western understanding of what Iran actually built. During years of sanctions, during years of isolation, during years when the world was confidently told, and that economic pressure was preventing exactly this kind of military development. The sanctions were specifically designed to cut off the technology and supply chains that advanced longer-range missile systems require. But the missiles flew 4,000 kilometers, which means one of three things. Either the sanctions failed to stop the acquisition, or Iran developed the full capability through entirely indigenous means, or the technology arrived through channels Western intelligence never successfully identified. Any single one of those conclusions represents a serious institutional failure. All three together represent something of an entirely different magnitude. Iran's official statement after the strike was carefully worded, deliberately precise. So peace and tree and tray. They described it as a significant step to threaten American interests beyond the boundaries of West Asia. They stated clearly that Iranian missile reach far exceeds what the enemy had imagined. That language was not celebration. It was a message to Washington, to every American ally, to every government that built its security on the belief that Iran's reach had clear limits, and treat and so and say is. The message was direct. The limits you believed in were never real. 5 weeks ago, this conflict began. With the United States fully confident it understood the complete scope of Iranian capability, it did not. 5 weeks later, 2 ballistic missiles crossed 4,000 kilometers of open ocean and struck the most remote, most protected, most deliberately chosen American military installation on the planet. The rear area is gone. The strategic depth is gone. The comfortable distance is gone. What remains is a conflict the most powerful military on Earth must now navigate without the map it believed it had, without the certainty it declared to the world, and without an answer to the one question that no one in Washington has yet been able to face. If they were this wrong about the missiles, what else are they wrong about? This has been the WW3 Alert. We will keep tracking every development, every strategic shift, every intelligence failure, every political consequence, every single day. Subscribe now. Share this with everyone trying to understand what is truly happening, because the next chapter has already begun.